Your neighbor Jim figured out that with Metro PCS, he gets unlimited data, talk, and text for $30, period.
Babe, that color looks awesome.
Just like he figured out that shopping with his wife will buy him a night with his buddies. That's Guys Night Out, figured out. You too figure it out. Switch to Metro PCS on the fast 4G LTE T-Mobile network for only $30, period. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Plan includes first 1 gigabyte of data at up to 4G LTE speeds. See store or metropcs.com for details and terms and conditions and data management info.
There's some dangerous, large carnivore out there.
And I saw that bird pick a young deer off the road and fly away.
And it was just about getting dark, and we started panicking, running down this ridge, not really having any clue what was throwing rocks in our vicinity, good-sized rocks. And I stopped long enough to get a 357 out of my backpack and look back, and that's when I saw it. I saw one.
For a week, the town of Defiance was being harassed by a werewolf. And it's actually attacked two railroad workers, killed livestock, just a lot of weird stuff that was going on.
Welcome, everybody, to Monster X Radio. Thanks for joining us. Monster X Radio is brought to you by Sasquatch Coffee. Have you tried it yeti? And I just want to welcome everybody aboard here to Monster X Radio. Thanks for listening. Got a fantastic show for you guys this evening. And just waiting for my co-host, Gunnar, to jump in. But
I am here.
Said that. Oh, there you are. There you are. Welcome to the show, Gunnar.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm sorry to have missed the weekend up at Olympic Project, but I know that you were up there. How was that? How's the weekend?
Oh, wow. I mean, I literally just got back in about a half hour ago. But the weather was fantastic. The group we had up there, fantastic. It was just one of those awesome trips out, expeditions out, and can't really talk of any Sasquatch activity. It really was a pretty quiet weekend. We had a bright moon phase going through, and I really didn't have any hopes anything happened. But it was more about interacting with our guests that were joining us on this expedition. We had Thomas Steenberg, who has been on Monster X recently, as a presenter, and Tom Baker spoke from the Olympic Project, and David Ellis, and we had quite a few really good presentations, very hands-on, everything from track casting to audio analysis to data analysis and collection, and backpack preparedness for those that really like to get out in the woods and be prepared, which I think all this is very key and very important to the research of Sasquatch. And I'm sure when we talk to our guest this evening, that's something I'm going to bring up to him, because he, I think, is on the same page with that as well. Fantastic group. So anyways, yeah, fantastic week. Met really awesome individuals, some novices, some really new to the Bigfoot world and research and some of the experiences. Others more veteran, and they still took stuff away and taught us some stuff. So, yeah, missed you up there, Gunnar, really did. And so really good stuff. I invited my buddy Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles up there, and I know he had a fantastic time. And he just, he really clicked with everybody. Everybody just really enjoyed his presence, and like I said, he got to see what we were about, and that's kind of why I invited him up there. And so overall, fantastic and wonderful weekend out.
Well, this was one of the Olympic Project's public expeditions that are available, throughout the year. On occasion, Derek schedules a public expedition, and folks that aren't part of the OP can kind of come out and experience what squatching in the Olympic Peninsula is like, and it is an awesome time. I've been up there several times now. That's how I know how several members of the Tillamook Forest Group are now, are members of the Olympic Project as well. So, are there any more public expeditions scheduled for this year that you're aware of yet, Shane?
Not tentatively, but I would imagine there's going to be. I would imagine as we get closer to June, maybe looking at June, July, or September, there'll be at least one more this year, at least, I would imagine. I would think Derek and us will be getting together soon to talk about this because, we just got such positive feedback. People really are hungry and thirsty to collaborate with people and just get out there and be prepared, and we think we're doing stuff the right way. And there's many other groups and individuals doing stuff as we think correctly, and we're very much open for feedback. And we're not all high and mighty, trust me. No experts in this field. So, but to share knowledge and experiences and ideas, it's fantastic. So I highly recommend it, getting up with the Olympic Project. Even some of the other local groups that do your homework, do your research on them, and if they've got something open, get out there and most of all, just enjoy yourself. And I know everybody that attended this past weekend enjoyed themselves tremendously, including myself. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's an awesome area. I mean, it's unlike any other area that I've ever been to. I mean, it's just
incredible. Yeah. And real quick, one of the guests attending was a male, and he a young male guy, and he was just blown away at the vastness of the wilderness. And we went on a couple pretty hardy hikes, and he was just absolutely floored. And every time I go out there, I'm floored. Just so beautiful and vast, and perfect habitat for a Sasquatch, and every other known animal. So get up there or get in the woods and have some fun. That's what we do.
And if people want to find out more about attending future Olympic Project expeditions, you can go to the website, which is olympicproject.com. Is that correct?
olympicproject.com, and also visit us on Facebook. Just look up Olympic Project, and get a hold of us there. If you guys have any questions, our email addresses in the Olympic Project group, or just jump on Facebook or send myself, Shane Corson, on Facebook a message, or Derek Randalls, or any of the Olympic Project members.
Right on. So our guest today is Michael Cook. Michael is the founder of the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, and we're excited to talk to Mike about his encounter that he had back in 2000 and what he's been doing since then. So without further ado, let's bring on Mike. Good afternoon,
hey, guys.
Michael. How are you?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Great.
It's going good. How about yourself?
That's great. It's a beautiful Sunday here in Kentucky. I'm sitting out on my front porch, and it's roughly around 73, 74 degrees. It's very nice. It's been a lot of rain lately, but this is a much-needed sunny day.
Awesome.
That's because you're on Monster X Radio. The sun is shining on you.
Right.
I know, right? I've been so excited about this. I got up like a kid on Christmas morning today, and I was like, "Oh my God, I get to be on Monster X Radio today." It's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for
I'll just
thanks
let
for
you
joining.
Keep talking, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, Michael, for those, I've seen your encounter and watched your videos about the encounter that you had, and It's been well reported, but for the listeners that aren't familiar with you and your initial encounter, can you go ahead and share that with us?
Absolutely. So 16 years ago, I was a kid. I just got my driver's license, and I got a little freedom. And my parents were always the kind of folks that were like, if you do good in school, you go every day, you go days you don't want to go, then you deserve a skip day every now and then. And in this particular area in southeastern Kentucky, there's a couple of times a year where the fishing is just phenomenal. And, it's just like everywhere else. Some days you'll go out and, you'll throw all day and not catch a thing. Other days you can throw a bare hook out and pull one in and one after one. And so they decided to let me skip school one day. And this was in October, by the way. It was fall of the year. It was very nice weather. Normal October in Kentucky is, not really it's that point. October in Kentucky is that point between summer and actual, cold weather where, you might get a couple of days of frost, but frost don't really hit here until late November, early December. So beautiful day, and I skipped school, so I went out to the riverbank, and it was at a place called Martin's Fork, which is in Harlan County, Kentucky. And the river runs out of the dam there. And I went to where a particular deep hole of water, an eddy, some people call. I went there because I've always done very good there. And at that time, I always tell people the same thing. At that time, Bigfoot really didn't exist to me. It was probably the farthest thing away from my mind. When I was in the mountains, I never worried about running into a Bigfoot or anything like that because I thought people were crazy, to be honest with you guys. And was I wrong. And so I'd been fishing probably 30, 45 minutes or so. And I was catching fish. I want to touch on that. I was catching fish, by the way, folks. But it wasn't a dry run. But I kept on hearing something across the river up the hill from me. And it was a steep hill. It was a really steep embankment. I couldn't give you a degree of incline or anything like that. But I kept on hearing something moving around in the leaves. And, like I said, nothing like Bigfoot ever crossed my mind. I thought it was squirrels or a deer. I'll actually, real quick, I saw a meme the other day that said a squirrel bouncing through the leaves sounds just like a 200-pound buck to a deer hunter. But anyway, this thing, man, to this day, I don't know. It didn't intentionally do this. I'm 150,000% positive it didn't intentionally do this. But it took a wrong step. It slipped, tripped. It lost its footing. The ground gave away with it. I don't know what happened. But in a blink of an eye, this big ball of fur starts coming down the hill at me, end over end. It's rolling. And I swear it sounded just like somebody threw a small car, a Volkswagen Beetle, something like that, off the hill. It was just crashing through the underbrush. And it came off the hill and went straight into the river, landed right into the river in front of me, probably 50 feet, give or take. And, at first I saw this big ball of hair, and I'm like, oh, my God, this is a bear. I know it's a bear. There ain't no way it's nothing else but a bear. And it moved around for a second and stood up. And when it stood up, I realized it wasn't a bear. This thing was standing straight up and 8 foot tall. And it held its arms up out of the water. By this time, I'm so freaked out, guys. I couldn't run. I couldn't do nothing. Fight or flight hadn't even It was in locked mode. I started to drop my fishing pole because if it was a bear, of course I'm going to run. Even though today I know that if I ran from a bear, then that's probably not the smartest thing to do. I mean, but you know, I'm a kid, so I start dropping my pole, and I'm looking at this thing, and it holds its arms out of the water, and it walks, kind of wades up, it wipes its eyes out, just like one of us would do. If you fall in the water, the first thing you're going to do is wipe your eyes out and kind of take a breath. And it walks up to the bank, and it takes one step, grabs a hold of a branch, a sapling or something there, grabs a hold of that sapling and just pulls itself up on a 5-foot embankment. I mean, it took one step just like you and I would take a 2 or 3 foot step. And when it got up, it kind of grunted a couple of times, and it turned and looked at me. As soon as it turned and looked at me, that's when flight kicked in. That's the moment it kicked in. I had enough time to get a really good visual of this thing. And, you know, I always tell people the story takes longer to tell than the actual encounter took. Actually, I mean, it was 45 seconds to a minute long was a long time if it was that. And I ran straight to my car, which 100, 150, 200 yards away, maybe not even that. But I got to my car knowing this thing was behind me. I knew it had crossed the river and was running up behind me. It was going to take me, and it was going to eat me, and I was never going to see my family, my friends, nobody ever again. It wasn't behind me. It was long gone. It went up into a holler. And above where it fell in at, it already made its way back up into the woods. And I sat there. I was trying to get my keys in my ignition. And if nobody's ever been there, you know, a lot of people think, you know, well, this is, you know, why couldn't you drive? Well, I was so scared and shaken. If I would have been able to get my keys to work and my mind to work, I would have wrecked. I mean, I was that shaken up. So I was smoking at the time, which, kids, if you're listening, don't do that. I quit a long time ago. But I lit up a cigarette, and I sat there, and I cracked the window. When I cracked the window, that's when I heard these screams coming from the holler. And I'm already freaked out, you know, and this just freaked me out even worse. I was just to pieces. I mean, I was literally melting and falling into pieces and melting in the floorboard as this thing was up in this holler making this sound. And that went on for a long time. That went on 30 minutes or so, 45. And finally it quit. I calmed down, and I went back down to the riverbank, grabbed my stuff in world record time. If somebody was standing there with a camera or whatever, that would have been Guinness Book of World Records, guaranteed. I booked it straight to the riverbank, straight back, and I got the hell out of there, guys. I mean, I really did, and I went home, and I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't bear the thought of closing my eyes, because every time I closed my eyes, I would see this thing looking back at me. And after time, you know, I put pieces of it together, and to this day, I can close my eyes and still see this thing standing there looking at me. I counted the fingers. I'm a very, very vigilant person when it comes to you know, observing things. I counted its fingers, had 5 fingers on each hand. Its hands were huge. Its hands, if you would have shook its hands, it'd been like shaking a big handful of bananas. I mean, it's just huge hands. And its arms. I actually talked to Jeff Breyers last weekend. I think it's Breyers, Creature Replica up at Ohio conference. We're talking about the North American Bigfoot, and I said, its arm proportions are wrong. And he said, what do you mean? I said, these arms on the one I saw were actually probably 5-6 inches below the knees. And if it wanted to and drop down on all fours and run, it probably could have covered a lot more ground. if it done that. But this for a year, I couldn't. I lost a lot of nights of sleep, and finally, I decided one day, to conquer my fears and everything. I'm going to have to go back to this location and see just how big this thing was. And God bless. I hope it don't come back. I hope I don't have another sighting. As at that time is what I thought. I'd give anything to do it again over. But I went back. I stood right where I was standing at when this thing rolled off the hill. And I sucked it up, and I walked out into the water. And I stand 5'10", somewhere around that range. And the water where it fell in at, it was like at the almost exact level at that time of year. I walked right out, and it came up to my chin, whereas the water come up on this creature right below its sternum, right below the breast line, or the chest line. I'm sorry, it didn't have any breast. That's why I call it a him. I know that for a fact. It didn't have any female physicalities. It just didn't. And I looked, and I saw exactly where this thing had climbed back up onto the riverbank. It ripped the sapling out and everything, and the ground was still disturbed where it had happened a year prior. And unknowingly, I was doing my first ever Bigfoot sighting investigation that would ultimately lead up to the Kentucky Sasquatch Team and all the amazing things that's happened to me since. And but yeah, it was an experience that I said that I wish I could do it all over again. But there's some days, guys, some days I wish I didn't see it. It's consumed me so bad and took over my life that much that some days I wish it wouldn't have happened. And I could have just had a normal life and went on my merry little way and but it happened. It allowed me, the forces of the universe allowed me to see this thing and to become a true believer. And I tell people all the time, I don't believe in Bigfoot. I know there's a Bigfoot. I know they are out there. So
Mike, you've said in the past that it did not compare. It's like, let's see, everything you know about how Bigfoot looks is nothing compared to what Bigfoot actually looks like. What do you mean by that?
I missaid that. Who am I talking to? Gunnar?
This is Gunnar, yeah.
All right. Gunnar, I missaid that. It looks similar to what people have saw. It's got the same look, but as far as like comparing it to Patty from Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson, no, it didn't look anything like Patty. The facial hair come way farther up underneath its eyes. Mm-hmm. The nose is real flat, and I wish there was a comparison. A gorilla has inverted nostrils. It had flared nostrils. It had a nose just like us. If you punched me right in the face, and widened it by an inch, 2 inches. That's how its nose looked, and it came straight out and kind of stuck straight up. I didn't see its teeth. As far as its overall structure, I compare it to a really, really tall NBA basketball player. Very, very tall Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal's already tall. And, 400, give or take. I didn't have a scale. I didn't have a measuring tape. I didn't say, hey, stop. I'm going to measure and see how tall you are. I'm going to let you step on a scale. And people criticize me over that, like, oh, well, this guy says that these things, 8-foot creature would weigh 700 pounds. No, I'm pretty good judge of weight. This thing probably went a good 400 pounds. It was built. It was muscular, but it wasn't like an overpowered weightlifter. It was broad across the shoulders, 3.5, 4 foot across the shoulders, but like a really tall NBA player. And it wasn't like one. You hear people, and I'm not saying they're liars or anything like that. There's several varieties of these things. The Patty, if you stood her straight out, and I mean, she'd probably be one uniform shape straight down from the shoulder or from the armpit straight down to the foot, with very little variation in curves and stuff like this. But this thing was, like I said, built like an NBA basketball player. Upper body, lower body, yeah. I mean, it had some legs on it, but it wasn't like overpowering.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it's. I think Shaq. Actually, I looked it up, and Shaq weighed about 325 pounds. So, and he's 7'1", and he actually outweighs Yao Ming. I remember seeing a picture of those two next to each other, and Yao Ming actually dwarfs Shaq, and because he's like 7'4", 7'5". I mean, it's crazy. So, but I mean, a lot of times people talk about how muscular a Bigfoot looks like, and you're saying yours wasn't like a body. I heard the term looked like a bodybuilder, and I would imagine that the thing is that there's variance within the species, just like there is within humans. But the creature that you saw was not overtly muscular. No,
I mean, as a joke, he didn't work out every day. He might have went to the gym,
right.
three times a week and kept his cardio and all that up.
Right.
But no, I mean, he wasn't lifting weights every day and pumping iron. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with testosterone also, and that's with any animal. So,
let
this
alone,
thing might have not had the testosterone the bigger ones do.
Yeah, let alone, you don't know what kind of health this thing was in. We don't so little about Sasquatch. You just don't know. But it's interesting about the weight thing, the guesstimation of Sasquatch weight, especially in sightings. I was talking to my good friend and fellow OP member James Milling this weekend, and that question came up with a group of people. And James is a lifelong hunter, and he said, most people overestimate the size of things. It's like you go fishing, and they think they'll say, oh, it's 20 pounds, when in fact it was 10. And they're not necessarily lying. It's just their guesstimation or what they perceive. And, well, sometimes they're lying, of course, especially when it comes to fishing. But, I believe people really overestimate stuff, and I agree with you, Michael. Like with your sighting, 400 pounds sounds very reasonable to me.
Well, it's just like you said, Shane. I mean, it's like I spoke at the Montana Bigfoot conference this past fall, and I do a Bigfooting 101 presentation at these things, and with my team, and I'm taking on new members as we speak. It's what I've been doing all day, actually, is going through new member apps and all this. But I do a thing where it's like I haven't really come up with a name of it yet, but it's size, scared size, frightened size compared to actual size. All right, so you take a person out in the woods that's never seen one of these things, and they run up on it, or it runs up on them, whatever, and they say it's 13 foot tall. I always shrink that down just a hair.
Right.
13-foot creature, maybe 11 foot, maybe 10 foot, because these people are freaked out. Now, the reason why I know this thing was 8 foot tall, give or take, I mean, like I said, no measuring tape, was because I went out in the river and I done the full-on investigation. I measured the water up to my chin, so you figure that's 5 foot. There was another 2.5, 3 foot sticking out of the water. And, I mean, that right there is how I got my size out of mine.
Yeah.
But it's like me. I'm terrified, and I hate to admit this on an international radio show, but I don't care. But I'm terrified of spiders. Yeah, you don't tell nobody. Don't tell nobody, people. I'm terrified of spiders. And a little garden spider, the size of a pencil eraser, looks like it's the size of a softball to me. I mean, you know, I'm running around trying to get my shotgun. I'm going to shoot this thing. And my girlfriend comes out and swats it with fly swat and says, "There you go. Now go back to doing what you're doing, puss." But that's the thing, though. Things grow as you get more excited.
It's a little bit like a fishing story too. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like But I also think on the other end, I think sometimes people underestimate bait because I think they base the weight, what they would think a human equivalent would be, and based on the fact that muscle weighs more than fat, and that these things are probably pretty athletic since they don't sit around and watch reality TV shows.
Right.
They're running through the woods chasing their food every day. I have a feeling that they're pretty lean and that they tend to be heavier. Sometimes I think the weight estimations seem a little low for something as large as what people are describing. Yours sounds like didn't have the muscle mass that a lot of encounters, that are reported in a lot of encounters. But so 400 pounds.
Well, it's just like
me too. And the thing is, it's a guess. Everybody's guessing, and like you said. When you first talk to somebody who just had an encounter, they're amped up. They just saw a monster basically. And one of the things I always like to ask our guests is, what was your context? What had you heard of Bigfoot before? Did you have any idea that you could possibly ever have an encounter in the area that you were in? I mean, or did just jump off of you had no context before, and here's this thing you thought was a bear that stands up and is obviously not a bear.
And that's the thing too, and a lot of people will know exactly, and you all will know exactly what I'm talking about. The more your name gets out there, and all that you're into these things, you're a researcher, you're serious about it. You're going to get more and more people trying to get attention, also. And I tell people all the time that I prove that this wasn't what they think it was, or that this was a bear or whatever. A lot of people are like, "Oh, no, it was a Bigfoot." If they're really adamant about it within the first 2 hours of seeing it, I mean, I kind of get leery about it because I know what it took me to accept. And I know what kind of trials and tribulations I went through to accept that I'd saw one of these things, that I'd encountered one of these things. And, it freaked me out enough where I wanted to see it again, as crazy as that sounds. But I ask people all the time, when they send a report to me, I ask them, I'm like, "So, do you watch Finding Bigfoot? Do you watch all these shows?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah. Well, does this thing look anything like what the dramatizations of this show?" And thank God for that show, guys, because it did bring the Bigfoot in the mainstream more in the last few years. And but yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, you've got to ask these people. Have you heard any stories? The thing about it is around here in Kentucky, you can throw a rock and, I mean, seriously, throw a rock and hit somebody, and
hit
guaranteed. No, you can throw a rock and hit somebody. You can throw a rock and hit somebody in a crowd, and guaranteed, if they haven't had a personal encounter with one, they know somebody who has, or they've heard stories about them all their lives. And I
run into that too. I mean, it's kind of like the 7 Degrees from Kevin Bacon game. It's like 7 Degrees from Bigfoot, and I find it it's interesting is how many people that you run into that if they haven't had a personal encounter, they know somebody, or they know somebody that's had a personal encounter. And it's interesting because once you get people talking and they know that they're not going to be ridiculed, they open up pretty easily. You know, people want to be able to talk to about it. People that have an encounter, like when you had your encounter, who did you tell? Who was the first person that you tell, or did you keep it to yourself for some time?
I kept it to myself for over a year, to be honest with you. I didn't want people. I didn't want the ridicule. I didn't want being made fun of. I honestly didn't. But after it happened, I contacted. I told a buddy of mine actually that lives up that way where it happened at, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "We've had dealings with them, you know, all of our lives. My grandpa and my dad and this and that, and told me all these things about this creature." Not this creature, but these creatures that lived in that area. And, until I formed the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, I tagged around with groups, and I told several people after over a year, I told several people that were in the Bigfooting world, I would get on the internet and I'd look up, Bigfoot teams and stuff like this and find contact numbers and tell them my story. And I was surprised. And a lot of them were like, what, do you want to go on an expedition with us? Do you want to, if you got any reports, will you send them our way? And now that's the way I am. People are calling me and telling me, and I'm like, well, they're telling me reports they're getting. Kind of like satellite people that, are just not part of the team, but are contributing members, honorary members of the team that are just sending me reports and stuff. They're investigating them. So I started investigating them. I started finding out that everything had a pattern in that particular area. And I finally broke down one day, and I told my dad, and I don't know what kind of weight that was lifted off my shoulders. My mom is a real reserved person, so I wouldn't have told her at that time. But I told my dad. My dad sat there, and he's a real understanding guy, and I take a lot from him. I'm a lot like him, and he sat there and nodded his head, and he said, "Well, I think they're out there, and I'll tell you why." And he told me a story. He told me about this guy he worked with in the mines, in the coal mines. And he when he was a kid, they were out coon hunting. And after a series of events happened, they encountered this, what they coined as a little hairy man. And which right now today, I view that as a juvenile Bigfoot, 3 or 4 foot tall. It was a juvenile. And when they actually went out and tried to look for this thing that same night, and a bad series of events happened, and a kid lost his life. Somebody rustled the bushes trying to scare them, and somebody shot and killed one of the members of their little hunting team, and they ended up having to carry him out of the mountains. And I talked to this guy personally myself. And God bless him, he's an old man now, but he still tells the same thing my dad told me. And Dad heard it from him and 2 other guys that were there with him when this happened. And that's the thing that I argue with people all the time. I had the same argument with my brother. My brother is a skeptic, and we're like daylight and dark when it comes to this stuff. But he's my best friend, and I share stuff with him. And he said, well, people are mistaken identity and this and that. So it's impossible for that many thousands and thousands of people over hundreds of years to make up the same exact lie over and over and over and over again. I mean, well, guys, we can go off air.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because when I get in discussions about people, it's, well, how do you know they're real? Well, if one piece of evidence isn't faked or misidentified, then they're real. I mean, there's thousands of footprints. There's thousands of eyewitness encounters. There's, it's in Native Americans talk about them. They're in totem poles with all other animals that we know are real animals. There's a lot. I mean, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence. There's DNA evidence, that comes back as an unknown primate. So, I mean, there's a preponderance of evidence. Most people that just dismiss it out of hand, basically, haven't really looked into it, and they don't like the idea that, I've run and talked to guys that are hunters or work in the woods as loggers and stuff, and they I've been in the woods my whole life, and I've never seen anything, and and they don't want to. They don't like the idea that there's an apex predator out there that they have not had, they're not aware of. So yeah, it's cool.
It's
Mike.
a thing of like, you talking about people that have been out in the woods their entire life. I just, like, the last few days, I got a report back last week before the Ohio conference coming out of the Smoky Mountains of two hikers that, they've been hiking 15, 20 years. Never in their lives, I mean, they've heard of Bigfoot. Who hasn't now? And that's the thing. Who hasn't heard of Bigfoot now? Who believes that's 3.1% of the entire nation? But these guys, they're hikers. They hike for days at a time. And they come down this hill in the Smoky Mountains. This mountain, they were heading to a camp. And they said all day long that they heard tree snaps and stuff going around them. But they also contributed that to wind. The wind was horrible down there in the last couple of weeks, but they heard it, and then a couple of rocks came through the air at them. And when they turned around, there's this dude standing up there, and they were adamant. I asked them if they saw. Well, my lingo gets me in trouble a lot. I say stuff, and I don't mean actual guy, dude, man. But
I got the impression
there's
that's
this
what you
creature,
meant.
right? There's this creature 11 foot tall standing above them, looking at them, and they said that it was just heavy breathing, looking at them like, you need to get the hell out of here. And that's what they done. And they ran, and they ran, and they ran, and they ran. And these guys have been hiking for 2 or 3 days. They were wore out anyway. When they called me, they got in the phone service, and they said they looked up all these Bigfoot groups and stuff and couldn't find a phone number. Finally come across my team and found a phone number, and I get this phone call, and I'm like, this guy's freaked out. I could tell him, he's like, is this Michael Cook? And I was like, yeah, I mean, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? Who is it? And they I can't say their names right now, but they introduced themselves and told me what happened, and I could tell the conviction. I could hear the conviction in their voice that they had saw one of these creatures. And it's just, why would, and I said, well, are you all still in location? They're like, hell no. We're on our way to a hotel. We're not going back in those woods. And I'm like, why not? They acted like I was crazy. But it's so weird because I was down there just weeks ago. I took my family, my son and I, and my parents went down, and we went over into Cherokee, North Carolina, and I sat around with some pretty cool people. They were the Cherokee Nation elders and historians, and I've been writing a book and all this stuff, and I got a section in that book about the Cherokee Nation and their folklore and their history with Bigfoot. And they enlightened me on a lot of things that I'd never thought about. And, I can't really discuss everything that they said because of the book and everything and that I'm writing. I mean, I don't want to give out all my information out, but they've had history with these things before the white man ever thought about coming over from Europe. And especially in the Smoky Mountains. I mean, it will blow your mind when you read the book. And you guys, I'll get you addresses in a couple of days, and I'll send you the book. But when it's finished being published, but it will blow your mind. And I didn't change anything in it on what they told me. Some of their language is a little coarse, but we're grown men. We're adults, you know. But they enlightened me on a lot of things that I really hadn't thought about. And they look at these things as the protectors, the spirits, the protectors of the forest. And when these things die, they become the spirits of the wild. And they protect, you know, the people that help them. One particular elder told me, you know, his father used to grow a garden. And they would always fill up 2 or 3 baskets of vegetables and set at the corner of the garden for these creatures. I said, well, have you seen these things? He goes, oh, yeah, I've seen them. I've seen them with my own 2 eyes. I've seen them walk out of the forest, out of the wood line, grab these baskets and walk back in and return the empty baskets with you know, ferns and wild root and stuff like this, you know, as kind of a trade deal. And but it's amazing what you find out when you talk to people like this.
Absolutely, I agree with you big time. And you, like you said, the natives here, the Native Americans, been dealing with Sasquatch a lot longer than we have, and you know, living in their environment. And that's a lot of things we forget. You know, as researchers, who, I mean, quite honestly, none of us are really truly living in the woods day in and day out. A lot of us spend a huge amount of time in the woods. I know, you know, such as yourself, Michael. But it's, you know, we have jobs and places to go. We're not in, you know, around Sasquatch 24/7. We're just not. So listening to elders and historians of the Native American culture and those involved is fascinating. I can't wait to read your book. It sounds really killer.
And I have another one coming out too, Shane. I've been plugging it also, even though it's not even finished being written yet. But it's strictly the Cherokee Nation and Bigfoot, their history with it, and it's a fictional story based on true events. I mean, did it all happen? No. I mean, I wrote it for strictly a story.
Right.
I'm writing it for strictly a story for entertainment purposes only. But it's got a lot of factual information in it that I know to be fact. That's from my own knowledge and from these people that I've talked to in the Cherokee Nation. And really and truly, it's about a Cherokee Bigfoot researcher that didn't even know, you know, that he didn't even know that he was a Bigfoot researcher. He wanted to find out what these things were. And his elders and his chief wouldn't tell him what these things were, you know, fully. So he wanted to go out and find out himself, and he has contact with these creatures, and I'm so pleased with how it's coming along. But I'm using a lot of Cherokee history and things that we know about Bigfoot and what they have told me. But yeah, I mean, I can't wait for you guys to read it. And my book is first person point of view reports. This is just how it, I mean, you know, I saw this, I saw that. None of John X saw a 6.5 foot, 300-pound creature going through his garbage, something like that. Right. It ain't like that.
That's refreshing.
Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, it's just how they told me. Because when I sit down with people and interview them, if they don't want to be on video, I always put my audio recorder out there, and I put it in their own words. And I make my report out of it, and I make a separate report in their own words, and that's how I put my book together. And, you know, now there's 355 reports documented reports since 2011. There's 200 or more, 200 give or take, I'll say that, reports before 2011 when I was a solo investigator that, you know, I was serious about it, but I also kind of done it as a part-time job, part-time hobby. And I kick myself in the tail every day because some of them I didn't write down. I just listened to them, and I was so fascinated at people telling me about this, I didn't write them down. And I look back on that, and I'm like, man, I could have had, 600, 700 reports by now if I would have written every one of those down. But,
no kidding.
You're young and you're stupid at one. Everybody is. And, you don't really know what the future is going to hold, so you don't. Now, I write down every little detail. When somebody gives me a report, I write it down, and I write down every little detail to how much dew was on the grass that morning. I mean,
Right.
I get detailed with them anymore.
Yeah, well, two things, and one, kudos to you for at least admitting that, and I'll admit to the same dang thing. When I got into this, you make mistakes, you learn from your mistakes, and you move on. You realize, oh, hey, I should have probably wrote that down or recorded that or whatever. But that's true humility, and that's a good researcher right there. That's someone that's willing to make, say, hey, I'm not perfect, but guess what? I'm trying to do the best I can. So thanks for that. Second of all, your book coming out, these firsthand reports, is it from a specific area or all from around the country, or how's that work?
Well, most of it is from Kentucky. 90% of it is from Kentucky. The Appalachian Mountain Range, special section dedicated to the Cherokee Nation. I branched out over the last few years, and I couldn't stay strictly in Kentucky because I was getting many reports from southern Ohio, southern Indiana, the states that's bordering Kentucky. And I've even got a couple reports from out your all's way in Washington and Oregon and stuff like that that's just came to me and stuff. And they there's a section dedicated for, the nationwide reports that I've done. But like I said, 90% of it is strictly in Kentucky, surrounding states, and the other 10% is out west and Cherokee Nation and this and that. So,
excellent.
But it's amazing. I've looked at it over, and it's in the editing stages right now. I fell behind because of funding and everything like that. You guys know all about that, but
yeah.
I fell behind with it, and I finally got it to where it's being edited and going into the publishing stages in the next coming weeks. And the publishers have told me that by August it will be available to purchase. So as soon as it's out, it's coming to you guys, and letting you all. I'd love to be a guest again on it when it comes out on here again.
Yeah, I would love to have you back on. I would love to read the book and then have you back on and discuss it. That would be great, and we'll talk about that down the road here for sure. Looking forward to it, Michael. Now, Michael, I really want to get into, you had this encounter, and now your mind's racing around. You start getting into it, the research aspect of it. How did you come up with the Kentucky Research Team? How did that form? Who's involved? And and I'd love to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, I figured.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed at this. And I saw somebody that tried or that sent me a request to join a group the other day, and I swear to you all, it was probably 10 words long, and that was the funniest thing I've ever done. Because whenever I created the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, for one, it wasn't the Kentucky Sasquatch Team. It was are you ready for this? Because
I'm ready.
It's a mouthful. It would never go on the back of a window or a T-shirt. It said the Southeastern Kentucky Bigfoot and Sasquatch Research Organization.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was like, yes, this is a SKB BDBR FO letter 7. And
hey, it's got a ring to it. It's a long ring.
Oh, man, it's a long ring. And I was like, I shortened it down, and I said, at the time, I formed the team, and I added 4 members. These 4 members were phenomenal. However, these 4 members could not give me not me. Let me retract that statement. Okay, not me. They could not give the research, the people, the witnesses the time to put into this due to work or family reasons or something like that, I would get a sighting and I would call up so-and-so. I'm not at liberty to say names now, but I would call up Bob and I would say, hey, Bob, I'm on my way to get you. We're going to investigate a sighting. He'd be like, well, I can't right now. It's just we just sat down to dinner, man. Can we do it tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we can't do it tomorrow. This thing happened, 3 hours ago. I'm on my way to get you. I've just became available myself. I'm on my way to get you. Well, I can't right now, and it got into stuff like that and expeditions and stuff. We're going out on expedition in 2 weeks. Well, I can't get off work. Well, I told you about this 6 months ago. We're going on expedition. Well, yeah, but I use my vacation days or something like that. And, it just got into that. And I finally had a meeting with them. I'm like, guys, and girl, are you serious about this? Or do you want to be a part of this? And every one of them told me the same thing. Well, we would if we didn't, work full time. I'm like, hey, I work full time too. But I also put time into this. I've got a little boy. I mean, I'm a daddy. Before Bigfoot, before anything else, I'm a daddy. And of course, if I had a face-to-face visual sighting come in, and my son needed me, I wouldn't be able to go. Because I'm a daddy first.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing I am. I'm a daddy first. But I also will get there. I mean, I want to be there and do these sightings. So going back, I lost 4 members. It was just me for like a year and a half. And I felt awful about calling myself a team and it just being myself. And I added a guy a couple years ago. And then it was just him and I. And he wasn't even in Kentucky. He was in Montana. And he would take in, he would monitor the email and all this stuff and relay to me and stuff like this, anything he got coming out of Kentucky. And after, last year, I had a couple other people over the last few years, but last year I revamped the team. And I've got a great audio, video guy, Todd Gilvin. He's a master at the electronics and stuff. My lead researcher, Mike Isaacs. He's been researching Bigfoot and cryptids most of his life. Just today, I've added. I can announce right now that a guy from my hometown where I have my sighting at, Thomas Mitchell, will be a researcher for me now.
Okay,
he's a new member as of today. Then you have Brian Sullivan of the Montana Bigfoot Project, who is a contributing researcher. And I filter, I'm strictly Bigfoot and Sasquatch. So I filter Dogmen, Wendigo, Mothman, stuff like that. I filter back to Brian.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's a whiz at that stuff. And then you've got me. I'm the lead investigator, researcher, and organizer of the team. So, and my girlfriend, she's more or less my. She takes care of a lot of the PR stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, touch on your first point about how you originally started with 4 people, and they couldn't, they were interested, and life gets in the way, they couldn't commit. I mean, that truly to me is now it's gotten better, and some of these groups have gotten really good members, but it's unfortunate because I think that's why we've not truly progressed with the research of Sasquatch. Personally, that's my opinion. Is that it's half done, and the reason being is because people have lives and jobs. No one's getting really paid to do this, so it's tedious, time-consuming, and we have you're a father first. Well, guess what? I'm a father first. I'm a family guy.
Exactly.
But this the Sasquatch phenomenon. I mean, I know Sasquatch to be real too. They're out there. What they are exactly, I'm not sure. I have my opinions, but I am very, very on board. I'm out there all the time, very obsessed in a manner of with the research of it, but it's a passion, hobby, and everything else. But that's half the reason I think we've truly not gotten further along. Now, having said that, we are getting there, in my opinion, with fantastic groups like your group, Michael, and other groups out there. So we are getting there. It's a slow, tedious process, and I think you agree. We don't jump to conclusions. We are very methodical in our research, and also who we bring aboard to join this endeavor. I mean, you've handpicked these people, and they bring something to the table. Now, speaking just strictly for on the topic of your group, your research group, what are you guys' methods and what are your goals? What do you guys do? What makes up this research team, and what are your goals and methods?
Well, Shane, I mean, it's just at first, you know as well as I do, whenever you start something like this, you start with maybe if you can afford a handheld camera, great. If not, then you're starting out with an iPhone and maybe a recorder of some kind, and that's how it started out. And we went from iPhones and voice recorders to handheld video to night vision. We thermal and stuff like this. And now we're talking about the deployment of a drone to do, and there's so many that's doing that, but, it's so exciting, that technology, and that's Bigfoot's biggest enemy right there is technology now, because Patterson and Gimlin had a 33-millimeter camera. Guess what?
Yeah.
We've 100,000 times better in technology than those guys were. Imagine if and I was talking about this just at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference over the weekend. Imagine if Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson had something like we've got now, an iPhone, an Android, something of that magnitude when they saw Patty. I mean, there would be no dispute over it. There would be no argument.
Right. Let me. I hate to jump in and cut you off here, but let me jump in here because this came up the other day as a question to me, and I love your opinion on this. Some say that because of technology we have not progressed. Rather than with what Bob and them were working with, Roger were working with, they have lesser technology. They're riding on horses. They have this camera. Some argue that less amount of technology will get you better results, where others will say, and I'm in the boat, quite honestly, that it's a needle in a haystack, but technology is a good thing. But I'm curious as to your opinion. Is technology, you think that's a good thing, or should we retract and go with less technology?
Well, it depends on. You're asking me. I think it's a good thing, but
yeah.
When you get people, some people feel that these things are affected by EMF, electromagnetic forces, and stuff like this from cell phones and this and that. If you put that in play, then technology is worse because they're going to detect you a long time before you're going to detect them. And I'll be honest with you, I don't buy into a lot of the supernatural or phenomenon that, and I've stated that numerous times when it comes to this, and I'll stand my ground on it. But I have an open mind about certain things, and I've got an article on my desk actually right now that talks about why we don't get good game cam pictures of them, and I haven't really read it yet. I skimmed over it, but it talks about the infrareds and all this, and they detect them long before the camera goes off. And but as far as interference and stuff like that goes, it's really hard to say. Like you said, there's no expertise in this, and nobody will know until everybody knows. And but as far as technology goes, I'm in a battle right now. Well, not a battle. Let me restate that.
Yeah.
I'm in a problem right now. I had a bunch of 16 by 20 photos come to me in the last few days that show something, but however, they are taken with a really small, like a 2-megapixel camera off of a flip phone. And I told the guy, he's a good guy, he's a really good friend of mine. He comes from Indiana, and I told him, I said, man, if you would have had an iPhone or something like this would have been gold right here, because you can make out what looks to be a juvenile Bigfoot. And I would love to show you guys, but I'm not at liberty. It's not my personal property. He sent them to me to analyze and get them to somebody else. But yeah, one of actually all three of our mutual friends. But and that's the thing. I mean, the camera qualities on these phones. I mean, I have an iPhone, and they're phenomenal. There's a thing called iPhone photography now. I mean, people are selling pictures and photos that they take with an iPhone that's just phenomenal. Looks like they've taken it with a $6,000-$7,000 camera.
Right. You brought an interesting point up, Michael. You know, and I've told people this before. You know, you get this argument, oh, why haven't we got, you know, like more trail cam pictures, or definitive, or at least a really clear picture of a Sasquatch on a trail camera? And my argument is that it really is a needle in a haystack. You know, it's a needle in a haystack for one, and two, how many people can afford
moving.
Yes, the needle's moving, but how many people can afford a really nice? You know, when iPhone came out, people were like, "Ooh, that's expensive." Not many people could afford the iPhone. You know, it was like, "Ooh, that's really nice and takes clear pictures and blah blah blah." I can't afford it, so they stuck with their kind of lesser phones with crappy pictures. But same thing with trail cameras. Not many people can afford a $500 trail camera or a $600 trail camera with great trigger speeds and invisible flash and blah blah blah. We're in the same boat. But this is where technology, I think, is fantastic. The prices are, as things progress, prices are coming down. The cost for more expensive trail cameras and better quality trail cameras are coming down, and eventually we'll have a market where your average consumer, those out in the woods, will be able to afford a pretty dang decent camera, and perhaps could get better pictures and clarity, faster trigger speeds, and all that. Right now, there's, you know, people think there's all these trail cameras out there, and there is. It really is, like Gunnar said, it's a needle in a haystack, but it's a moving needle. And can they see some of this infrared and stuff? Who knows? Probably. I don't know. But we're getting better and better, and technology is a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we're talking about a creature that is elusive, and we don't know its level of intelligence. So, you know, does it look at a camera? I can tell you personally from what we've experienced in the Tillamook Forest Research Group is that we've had them, what we think is a Bigfoot, approach a recorder that has a LED light on it. But we've gotten no pictures from the trail cameras that we have in there. But of course, it depends on where you place them. You got to think in terms of how, in percentages, how much of the entire wooded area in the United States is covered by trail cams. I mean, it's a fraction of a percent. You put them up there in the best area that you hope that might possibly get them. And I've had not arguments, but I've debated people who have said, well, there's no, you know, they think that trail cams are Bigfoot repellent, but then you have to explain the pictures that actually do exist, what look like. You can't explain as anything else. You've got the Salt Lick one. You got the one on Cliff's DVD that is on a trail, running on a trail. You've got the apple tree one that either are really good fakes or look to be like they're Bigfoot caught on a trail cam. So it isn't impossible to get one, but you're talking about even there's how many total Bigfoot researchers are there that are, and how many of those are utilizing trail cams, and how many of those are utilizing really good trail cams, and how many of those are, you're putting them up and hoping. It's such a low percentage of the forest that is actually covered by trail cams, and then if you factor in any level of like detection by these creatures that obviously are pretty elusive of man, it's no wonder that we don't have good trail cam pictures. So,
well, and you take like in the Smoky Mountains, and that is actually where we're going to do our big expedition this year in the Great Smoky Mountains down in Tennessee, and there's so much of a headache when it comes to filming and this and that in places like this. And I've talked to like 15 different people already about permits and this and that. And I'm like, I've touched on the trail cams, and they're like, oh, well, are you going to be nailing these into the tree? And I'm like, are you even familiar with the trail cam? I mean, it's a Velcro strap that that goes around the tree. I'm not going to hurt the tree, I promise. And they're like, well, if you hurt the tree and there's proof, you could be fined and this and that. I'm like, whoa, is it even worth it? And to even go through these arguments with these people,
right?
And with cameras and stuff like this, I get asked too many times, and I used to say that I used to say, well, I get asked all the time, but I get asked way too much now. Why didn't I take a picture of this creature in 2000 with my cell phone? Well, there's a simple explanation for that. In 2000, we didn't have these phones. We didn't have these video calling capability with so many megapixel phones. If you had a phone with a camera on it, it was a very, very low megapixel camera. It was on a flip phone. The trigger speed, the quick draw speed on it was, 4 to 6, 7 seconds before you could ever get it out. And to be honest with you, I don't think I would have been able to take a picture. I was so freaked out when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, that's another thing. There's been people, I mean, there's been folks like you in that position, and they've had cameras, and it's the last thing they're thinking about. I mean,
they're not. They're in shock.
I mean, you put yourself in the position of someone who's standing there, and in your position, Mike, and you're seeing a legend or something that you didn't think existed, and all of a sudden it's standing in front of you. The last thing you're really thinking about is, hey, I think I'll get my camera on and take a picture. And I remember having my first digital camera had less megapixels on it than my phone does now.
Yeah. Well, and you touched on that, and I'm not speaking for him. He's one of my best friends, and you all know him very, very well. And I went to Montana with him. I value this man as not a friend, but a family member, a brother. That's how close we are. But that's none other than Ed Brown. And and Ed, if you're listening, I'm not speaking for you by any means. But in January of 2015, Ed and I got to know each other through a series of sightings that happened in my area. And he heard about my sighting, contacted me, wanted to do a sit-down with Ed Brown. And, of course, I done it. But before the sit-down with Ed Brown happened, I put him in a location which was right in Bigfoot Central in eastern Kentucky. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to guarantee you a sighting. I can't do that. And if I said I'll guarantee you a sighting, it makes me look like a hoaxer. But Ed went down, and I'm sure you all have heard the story. Ed went down to Harlan. He was in a cabin, and he was up on this hill. He could not have picked the worst time of year to go to Harlan. I told him that over and over and over. At that time, in the valleys, it was a snowstorm of biblical proportions. I mean, it was dropping inches of snow an hour. And then he climbed up this hill, and he finally stopped and looked across the way over to the other mountain, and he saw a figure coming down the hill. And, you know, he's on his hands and knees trying to navigate and to get his footing and stuff. And he can't do it. And this thing's as graceful as it would be if there wasn't any snow on it. And I'm talking over on that particular mountain range. I mean, snowdrifts are probably 2.5, 3 foot, 3.5 foot in some places. And this thing walking down it just like you and I would a set of steps. Ed had a camera on him. He had a camera on him the whole time. He watched this creature. He never once thought, "Oh, I'll get my camera out here." You know, and he's a prime example. You know, and I've told.
But if I have a camera, if I'm out in the woods and I see a Bigfoot and unless my camera is in my hand and I don't even know, I'd be so dumbfounded and not want to miss the experience. And we had that actually happen with one of our team members in the Tillamook Forest Research Group that had a sighting last September, and she didn't think about taking a picture. She didn't want to look away from what she was. She wanted to experience and see what she was seeing. She was afraid that if she took the time to get her camera out, that she'd miss it and it'd be gone. And just like your encounter lasted a very short period of time, for them to, especially if you don't have any context, it's like, what the hell am I looking at? All the things that people's brains go through when they're having that kind of encounter. You're not thinking, we're first trying to think, what the hell am I looking at?
Yeah.
And then you're not even, go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I want to give the guests plenty of airtime, but this brings up an interesting point because this past weekend during the Limit Project expedition, and this was spur of the moment, an idea thrown out there, and we asked the attendees if they wanted to partake in this. Tom Baker had a Bigfoot costume on him, really crappy one, I'll be honest with you, really bad. And what we did, everybody was on board to do this, what we did was, and they knew he was going to be in the field dressed as a Bigfoot. The goal was for someone to take a really good photo of him. He didn't, we were going along a trail. He was going to pop in and out, different distances, different motions, standing still, running, blah, blah, blah. See who could get the clearest photo of him dressed in his costume. And I'll tell you, too, that he, there were rules. You can't shoot him, for one. Two, when he was not not running around in his costume, he wore an orange vest. You just never know. We took precautions that, it sounds like a stupid thing, but it was very well prepared. So, and everybody was safe and sound. But the goal was to get a clear, a clear, crystal picture of him, and to spot him, just spot him. And I think one person got they saw him, but nobody got a crystal clear picture. Every picture they took when he ran by was a blob squatch, and a lot of times they just walked right by him. They didn't even see him, and his costume was a nasty. It didn't match anything out there. He would stand out if you saw him. People walked right by him. When they saw him, he was gone. The pictures were blurry. They were blob squatches, and so it was a real testament to how hard it is to truly capture a picture of Sasquatch, and it was a fascinating thing for us as researchers and those attending the event. It was truly amazing. Michael, you know how hard it is to capture just known animals in the field.
Well, it's just like Tasmanian devil, Shane.
Absolutely, good point.
The Tasmanian devil. Most of the pictures you see of that is of one in captivity. There's been very few instances that you'll actually see a Tasmanian devil in the wild picture. It's because they're so friggin' elusive. A clouded leopard. You can count the amount of people that's actually caught a clouded leopard on camera in the wild on your hand. And that, imagine a creature of Bigfoot magnitude, you know. And people say, well, if this thing's 12 foot tall, man, you know, why don't we see them? Well, I mean, they're so elusive. I got one report from a guy. He said this thing was almost 400 pounds. And when it was running, it wasn't hardly even making a sound as it was running. It was so graceful and light on its feet that this thing, when it was running, it didn't make hardly a sound. He said, I heard it because I was looking at it. If I looked away, I would have never heard it. So, I mean, you know, arguments like that are really and truly, you know, easy to win in their case because, you know, you can throw that out there.
Right.
And a fawn, a baby deer. There's been instances where a doe will lay a baby deer right on gravel or asphalt, and if you look at it and look back, glance at it, it's like a pile of leaves laying there. So
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, Michael, I was going to kind of shift gears here, but you know, with my original, and I'll be honest, I was researching prior to my original encounter and sighting, but guess what I wasn't doing? I wasn't researching. I was fishing. And like yourself, I caught fish, okay? I did well. You know,
I think there's some correlation between fishing and catching fish and Bigfoot encounters.
Well, and bodies of water.
Yeah. Well, and this, I think right now we have 100% correlation between fishing and catching fish and Bigfoot encounters.
Yeah, but my point, you know, Michael, my point is, well, obviously we're both pretty good fishermen, but secondly, you know, we have this instance where we were not out researching, as our 99% of the encounters reported, where people are just doing average things, you know, and being average, doing camping, fishing, hiking, driving, and you have these encounters. You know, how much does that play into it? I mean, what do you take away from that into your research? You know, I mean, are you the type of guy, Michael, that now as a serious investigator, researcher of the subject, and you're looking back on your encounter, as I do, do you go out do wood knocks, calls? What do you take away from your original encounter that you apply to your research now?
I will say, you know, I'll say something we already said. Mm-hmm. We learn from our mistakes. Mm-hmm. And, you know, up until, and I'll state this, and if any of them are listening, I respect you guys a lot, but a lot of people look at us, and I know you all get the same, I know for a fact you all get the same feedback as I do. People look at us and say, oh, so you all do like finding Bigfoot. You all go out, you all hold town hall meetings, and you go to these Bigfoot hot spots where people have saw them, and then you go out and do wood knocks and howls and this and that. No, I don't. And I tell you, I used to go out, and if I wouldn't hear anything, I would do a couple of howls, and I would scream like a wild man, and I would wood knock. I would beat trees to death with baseball bats. And, you know, I learned from a couple of people, and one of them, you know, told me he was on a TV show. Stacy Brown, a good friend of mine, he told me that he just walked out in the woods and sat down. And you'll hear more, you'll get better feedback and evidence if you just go out and sit down and listen. So anymore, I don't go out. I don't go out and scream and stuff like this, and I've got a very good theory about this. Huh. If you don't know how to speak Chinese, will you walk into a place in China and just start trying to speak Chinese? No, you're not going to do that, because you don't know what you're saying. You go out and you howl at these things. You hear one howling and screaming, and you scream back and howl at it just like it howled at you. What are you saying to this thing? Mm-hmm. You might be provoking it you might be putting yourself into danger. And I mean, you take
the screaming means something like, somehow I'm ready for you to come have sex with me. So I try not to scream.
That is a very good. That would be very bad. I'll tell you, that would be very bad. But and you're right though. You could be screaming. This thing could be howling over on the ridge across from you. Now, it might, in its own language, it might be saying, "Hey," and you say, you yell back, "Hey," it's like, "What's up?" And you're like, "What's up?" And it's like, "How's your mom and them?" Well, how's your mom and them? And why are you repeating me? And you're going to freak it out and you're going to scare it off. And that's I'm a turkey hunter, and I stated this on an interview the other day. If you cluck, if you cut, if you purr, if you yelp, if you gobble too much, an old gobbler will not come around you. An old turkey will not come around you. He knows better. So when you're out here Bigfooting and you're howling and going on, and you get a couple of responses, you might have it fooled for a second. That Bigfoot's smarter than you. It knows its own language. And it's going to be sitting back laughing at you.
Well, I think, those kind of methods have been effective in getting responses. But if you have any experience in doing that kind of stuff, you know that you can, after a while, you don't get any response anymore. And I think you're exactly right, Mike. I think that initially they hear something and they think it's something to respond to, and then you keep going, and I think that they think, wait a minute, that is not that's not another Bigfoot. Any more than if we as humans are out and we yelled in the woods and a coyote goes off. We would recognize that as not being another human, and we might do it we might respond once or twice just because, depending on how much we've had to drink, we might go back and forth with these coyotes for a while, but after a while, we get bored with it, and we know that it's not another human responding. I'm reasonably comfortable in saying that I think that they recognize their own conversation. I think other animals, that are lesser intelligent than a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, recognize their own kind after, even if we are interacting with them vocally for a while. You do that with the coyotes for a while, and they stop after they realize that they're not interacting with another coyote. They're interacting with something that doesn't understand language. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Well, and that question was asked to me this past weekend up at the Ohio conference a lot. My methodology over this, and guys will tell you, you might go out in the woods, you might sit out there for 8.5 hours and not hear a single cricket. You might go out and 30 minutes into it, you start hearing wood knocks and stuff like this, and I get excited. And I know you all do too. We've been doing this for a long time, but still, I'll tell people too, I'm a turkey hunter. I tell people that. I still get just as excited hearing a gobble now as I did when I was a kid. And I still get excited hearing a wood knock or a faint whoop or a howl off in the distance. I get tore up quick over it. I get excited though, but the thing is, you gotta look at it in a logical sense. You got to be excited about it, of course, but you also got to keep it at bay a little bit and become a researcher again.
Bam.
Not let that child in you come out,
well said.
because if you do, you're going to be sitting there with your voice recorder off. And you're just going to be smiling from ear to ear, listening to this going back and forth. And it's happened. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it's happened. And, but, it's all in keeping everything real, everything at bay, all your excitement and stuff. And somebody asked me a couple of days ago. They said, "What would you do if you were sitting out in the woods and one just walked around a tree?" And they used the part from Harry and the Hendersons as an example, where the guy, he's walking through at the end of it, and Harry comes out from behind a tree, or he falls down out of the trees or something. He lands right in front of this guy. What would you do if this happened to you? If you were standing a foot away from it, you're looking right into its eyes, and it's sitting there looking back at you. And I'm like, well, when I get done pooping on myself,
exactly right.
I'm gonna try to reach out and touch it, grab a handful of hair or something, or I'm gonna, depending on its demeanor, I'm probably gonna take off running, try to snap pictures while I'm running, video or whatever. My girlfriend, she asked me, she said, "Well, if you're filming one day and one walks out and just grabs a hold of you and rips you from limb to limb and everything like that," and I said, "Well, whoever finds the video, you'll be a rich woman. I mean, that's how
right.
it's going to go."
It's funny because I asked that question to Cliff Barrickman for finding Bigfoot like a while ago, and he's like, that's like his dream way to go to leave this plane of existence. It's like to be torn up by a Bigfoot. Like, okay, if it happens, it's kind of like if you're out Bigfooting. If it happens, you hope that you could leave some good evidence behind. So
I got in touch with Cliff over the weekend again at the Ohio conference, and man, I just gotta commend Cliff. And I like I said, I got back in touch with him. It's been years, but he is such a phenomenal guy. He is great, and him and Bobcat Goldthwait and Bob Gimlin absolutely loved my girlfriend because she's not a Bigfooter. She's into it because I'm into it. And I look around at the Ohio conference, there's her and Cliff and Bobcat and Bob Gimlin standing there talking, and I'm like, what in the world? And they were like, we love her because she don't know who we are.
So true.
No, I mean, so you were able to make it to the Ohio conference this year. Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Well, I went a few years ago, and I done it really bad. Mark and I were talking about that. Mark Dwarf, good guy. You all know him.
Oh, yeah, awesome guy.
Awesome guy, man. We were talking about it, and I told him, I said, Mark, I came a few years ago, but what I done, I drove up on Saturday, and I drove back on Saturday. I was only there for 2 hours.
Holy cow,
yeah, it was 4.5 hours away from where I live. And this time, my girlfriend and I, we drove up on Friday night, went to the meet and greet, and got a hold of everybody. This is the first time that I ever got to meet Bob Gimlin. I've had a couple of chances that didn't pan out, but oh my God, you all know him, man. It just blows my mind, and he's such a great guy. Oh my God, he's like, I felt like walking up to Mick Jagger or somebody like that when I was walking up to him.
But he looks better than Mick Jagger.
Well,
Bob,
and I talked to...
Is the Mick Jagger a Bigfoot? I like that.
Yes,
yeah,
but looks better.
Yeah,
he looks a whole lot better. He looks a whole lot younger.
Yeah. Bob is
he
is this most gracious guy. I mean, I've had the good fortune to meet Bob on numerous occasions now. He comes to Beachfoot. He has come to Guy Edwards' event in Portland, Hopsquatch, and he is just what a down to earth guy.
Well, I was standing there talking to John Kirk III, and I've known John for a few years, and this is the first time I got to meet John. We've talked on Facebook a lot and stuff, but I was excited about meeting John, and I was telling him, and I was like, John, I don't know how to. He goes, well, there's Bob, and I said, I don't know how to go up to him. He goes, just walk up to him. Quit being a chicken. Walk up to him. He ain't gonna bite. And I just walked up to him and I was like, Bob, I'm Michael Cook from the Kentucky Sasquatch Team. I'm honored. I can't express how honored I am to meet you. And he reached out his hand and he shook my hand. He said, well, the honor's all mine. And
sounds like Bob.
And I said, wow, and it was instantly like talking to your grandpa. I mean, that is the feeling that I got.
Mm-hmm.
So the next morning,
never met a stranger.
No, and man, he's sharp as a tack too. At that age, man, I hope I'm like that. I doubt that I'll live that long, but the next morning we were. Yeah, I hope. But we were standing outside, and I was talking to Dave Groves and a couple other guys, and Jody Cook and a couple other people. But Bob walked out. I guess he walked out to get a breath of fresh air. Looked me dead in the eyes and was like, "Well, hey Mike, how you doing today, buddy?" And I was like, "Oh God, he knows my name." And another phenomenal cat, man, was Tom Yamarone. He's a great dude.
Oh, yeah. Tom is
Bob
awesome.
Cat Goldthwait. I actually met Bob Friday night. I was telling my girlfriend, I said, I don't know how to approach this guy. And she's like, you want me to go up to him? I don't know who he is. And I was like, it's phenomenal to me that you don't know who he is, but whatever. And I walked up to him, and I was like, hey, I'm Michael Cook from the Kentucky. He goes, and he cut me off at Kentucky. He goes, Sasquatch Team. And my heart dropped out of my chest, and I was like, how do you know that? He goes, I follow stuff like this all the time. And I was like, so you know who the Kentucky Sasquatch Team is? He goes, oh, yeah, I've watched your videos and stuff. And really great guy. And his movie, Willow Creek, phenomenal film.
Oh, yeah.
And there were so many people, though, that were there. Lyle Blackburn. Lyle's a great cat, too, man. We stood and talked forever Friday night, and then Sibylla Irwin, the sighting sketcher. What a classy lady. Wow, she is a fun person. Just a good energy coming from her. And
it's a great event. Mark does an incredible job of you think about, we have some events out here out west. We've got the Sasquatch Summit, which comes up in November, and we've got Ed Brown is putting together, along with some friends of his, the first ever International Bigfoot Conference in September, which Shane and I are scheduled to speak at. And
I was actually a part of that, but I was a part of that for a little while, but due to some personal, it was Bigfoot related and everything. Due to that, I wouldn't have been able to make it. So. Him and Russell Acord was out at the Ohio conference. He's written the book series Footprints of a Legend. And I met Russ out in Montana, and what a cool cat, man. And his books are phenomenal. They're great fictional stories, but they have a lot in them that are research related facts that people like us have come up with over the years. And Russ is a great guy, crazy great guy. And I'm quite. Somebody asked me who's going to be at the international conference, and I said yes. And they said, what do you mean? I said, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, anybody who's the who of Bigfoot is going to be there. And I told Ed that, and he laughed, and I said, somebody asked me who's going to be there, and I said, yes. That's all I can say. I mean, everybody's going to be there. That's going to be around the time that we get really busy here. And I'll actually be, I talked to Todd Neese a couple of weeks ago, and I won't be at this Beachfoot, but I will be at the 10th anniversary Beachfoot. I will be there next year.
Well, Michael, really look forward
Yes,
to
sir.
meeting you at the Beachfoot. That sounds fantastic. I know we're going to be, Gunnar and I will both be at the upcoming Beachfoot. We'll no doubt probably be at the following Beachfoot. Look forward to meeting you there.
Well, you'll probably get to meet me beforehand. I will be in your all's area in just a couple of months, actually, and I was going to send you all some invites for lunch or something like that. But absolutely,
definitely.
I cannot wait to be out there.
I was going to say, the thing is that I appreciate is you had opportunity to come to this conference, but yet research took precedence, and that's what it's about. That's what we're here for is the research. These conferences are fantastic. We get to share some information, get to collaborate with other people, and talk to people. But that's what are we here for? Research, and that has to take precedence. If I had something going on, I would have to apologize to Ed Brown and go, hey, I'm sorry, I apologize. Can't do it.
That's why we call you hardcore. Shane Hardcore Corson.
I'm hardcore, and so are many others. I mean, period, including Michael and many others out there. And research has to take precedence. To these conferences.
The October expedition is taking place almost exactly a month to the day after this, and for that month, I will be so busy because I've got to get permits. I've got to get the filming permits, the hiking permits. We want to take a big, crazy group with us, but the park kind of shut that down. They were like, yeah, you can take about 12 people with you. So we had to shorten it to 8 because of the camps will only hold, the trail camps will only hold like 12 to 14 people, and they said we couldn't take up, the whole capacity of the camps. And we couldn't stay no longer than 3 days at one particular camp. But we've also got permission to go off the grid into another section of it, but of the park. But I've got all that going on. Plus, I can't really say that. I was going to say something, but I'm going down to Florida next month to talk to some people about something pretty big coming up, and everything. But like
Mike, if you want to announce it, you want to share that first on the Monster X radio. There's only a couple people listen, so it won't get out.
Well, I'll tell you now, there's a good possibility that I'll say this, and you all will know what I'm talking about. You all see a lot of me anyway. I noticed you both like the Kentucky Sasquatch Team on Facebook, and you're friends of mine on Facebook, but you all see a lot of me anyway from videos and stuff like that. You might be seeing more of me within the next 6 months, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And
excellent.
You're going to be on TV.
Wait a minute now. Oh, my God. There's a good possibility that you might see more of me. You never know. I might move in with one of you guys. So
wait a minute.
Oh,
shit. I'm not.
It might be in the garage, but you're welcome to.
All right. That's all I can say about that. But, there's so much going on. I've worked so hard to bring the Kentucky Sasquatch Team into this community, this world that we are a part of. And it's not for personal gain or anything like that. It's for research and getting the names out there and getting the reports coming in and letting people know. Don't be afraid to tell somebody about what you saw, because there's people like us out here that will understand, that will sit and listen to you, and not hear you talk, but listen to you talk. And we will believe you. And within a reasonable respect, we will believe you. If you start harping that you saw a 40-foot creature, a 40-foot Bigfoot walking around, tearing down buildings and stuff, I'm going to be a little bit skeptical about it.
Waterman.
But with funding and stuff like this, it's hard, guys. And I'm so nervous about saying this, but I created a GoFundMe page for the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, and I put on there, field equipment, research equipment, and expedition funding, and I got blasted so hard over it. I put it on a couple of other groups, and they were like, "Get a job, you lazy bum," get a job, go buy a thermal camera, and do like the rest of us do. And I'm like, yeah, the big time guys, they got funding. Small town guys like me, we don't.
It's tough. I think people don't understand what it takes to. Now I'm going to slip into my Shane Corson fanboy, but I really think that if we had an opportunity to put Shane Corson in the woods for 3 to 6 months, that Shane Corson would come back with some pretty definitive evidence of what we're looking for.
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, people really don't.
Let me just say I think there's that's really cool, but I think there's multiple individuals that are very capable and want to do something in the future.
Whatever.
No, I'm serious.
No,
I think there's multiple individuals.
I agree. I mean, I know there's lots of people out there that and we saw a little bit of that with the crashed Falcon project. That there was a couple individuals that showed up and went out into the area where they had they were going to go into, and they had some encounters. I think if we the problem is, and just like Mike is talking about, every one of us that are Bigfooters are doing this for the most part on our own dime, and it's amazing in the Bigfoot community is what people don't want Bigfooters to try to raise any funds for research. They think you do it on your own dime like I am, and I think if we had a well-funded group, we don't, back in the day, Tom Slick funded some Bigfoot expeditions, and they got some results. I think right now, unfortunately, we've got a lot of people that are citizen scientists out looking for Bigfoot, but every one of them has day jobs that they have to, they have to pay their bills and whatever.
And if you have a job like me, I can look at my company, I can look at my boss, and I can say, hey, man, I need, next week I need Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. And he's like, oh, for Bigfooting? And I'm like, yeah. And, he'll be like, all right, cool, have fun, hope you go catch one. And I'm like, I hope I don't catch one. I mean, I don't know, I don't have a big enough truck to put it in, but,
well, let us know, Mike, because we'll drive over and help you out. So we'll find it.
Yeah, I'll have to cut the top of it out and let him ride shotgun with me. But but that's the thing, though. I mean, you said it. I mean, we have jobs, we have day jobs, and my weekends my life is crazy. I mean, I never thought, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be running the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, and I'm a little bit arrogant about it. I mean, one of the most well-known this side of the United States. But, as far as name goes, it's not the biggest team, but it's a household name. It's getting there. If you would have told me that, I told you were crazy. That I'd be solo in it and all this stuff. And the Ohio conference, I wasn't a guest. I wasn't a speaker or anything like that. But I mean, there was people walking up to me all weekend long. Hey man, you're the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, and I'm like, yeah, you know me, and they're like, oh yeah. And one guy actually said, oh, I can't wait until the Monster X radio interview, and I'm like, yeah, that's happening next Sunday, So, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, but Michael, in your opinion, we're getting short on time. I think we're going to have to do another interview with you because I got so many questions for you, and they're collaborated questions. But what, in your opinion, is going to take to get further along? I'm not necessarily proving the existence of Sasquatch. What's going to take to further the research and get this thing more accepted, not just with the general public, but with science, in your opinion?
I hate to, I don't want to see this happen, Shane and Gunnar, but honestly don't. And if I was looking down the barrel of a rifle at one of these creatures, I can honestly say that I don't believe in my heart of hearts that I would be able to pull the trigger. But that's me. That's my own personal, my feelings about it. But in order for this thing to be proven, of course we're going to have a body, and not some kind of dead bear that's made to look like one. We're talking about an actual body of this creature, or a live specimen, or something like that. As far as research goes, and moving along to better research, we're going to have to. The Falcon Project had the right idea, of course, but they, my opinion only here. I'm not. I mean, blast me if you will. Not that big, not that expensive, but keep it in a practical range. But the Falcon Project had the right idea. Just tone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And thermals. I mean, FLIR is working diligently every day for new thermals coming out, and all these other companies are working so hard. Trail cams and stuff. Everything. It's all going to be. We all know that video proof of it, such as Patterson-Gimlin, isn't enough. That they ain't going to accept that. So it's going to have to be a body eventually. And I'm not going to be the one, unless I'm attacked, my life is threatened. I won't be the one pull the trigger.
Right. I think science will, and a lot of people are like, well, true science, who cares? I personally like to get, and I'm sure you do, Michael, as well. We have actual scientists and people involved that are not public. Some are public, some are not public, that are very interested in the subject, whether they've had their own experiences or just vetting the evidence being provided, whether it's audio, visual, encounters, tracks, hair samples. There's scientists involved in this that are just not, like many solid researchers that don't publish this stuff out there. They're vetting it, and it's a long, tedious process. But and I've said this time and time again, we're getting somewhere. We are getting places, and it's a slow, tedious process until it will take a body or something of that nature to prove it.
Yeah. Live or dead.
But live or dead. But the gathering of data, and that's what we're here doing, is the gathering of data and whatnot, or the day of discovery.
This thing would have been already proven in existence in a court of law, with the amount of witnesses and detailed.
The preponderance of evidence, correct.
Well,
no, I mean there's
court of law.
There's eyewitness testimony. There's physical evidence through prints and audio and DNA evidence. I mean, you're right. I think if it was any court of law, it gets proven, but that's not what we're in the court of science, which
exactly.
is good. It's good in the way that we are required to
keeps our standards high.
Right, and vet what evidence that we collect through, because it's really, when we got at one end, we got people that will call anything Bigfoot. I call it Bigfootitis. And then we got people at the other end that that vet things. I will credit Shelley Covington, Montana, for the phrase Bigfoot last, because you run it through every filter, and the last thing that you attribute it to is Bigfoot, which is also and one of the reasons why I joined the Olympic Project, because they get evidence that way. That the last thing that you call evidence or attribute it to is Bigfoot. So Mike, what kind of experiences you now have a research group. What kind of evidence is the best evidence that you've had to date since you've been a researcher? And
the best evidence I've collected, I'm a footprinter, man. I'm big into footprints. I really am. Over the last several years, we have investigated 42 footprints in the state of Kentucky and in Virginia, northeastern Tennessee. But I have personally casted 11 footprints in the state of Kentucky. Those are my best. And they all range. The smallest one is about the size of your hand, 6 inches long, too wide to be a human hand, too much to be like one of those shoes, the 5-finger shoes. It's too much to be that, and you just have to see it. There's pictures up on the Facebook, but the footprints. We've had hair samples over the years that's turned out to be known animals. One come back unknown, but it's actually not with me anymore. It's with the lab that had it. That was my doing. That was me for a comparison in later samples that I would send them if it would come back the same as that. But the footprints, there's footprints that prove or that are good evidence that we've collected, and witness testimonies. There's videos. If you watch any of the videos, the Lorraine Deal video is probably one of the best interviews I've ever done, because you can actually tell this lady, really nice lady, you can tell she's still shaken up, and it happened over 50 years ago to her. And these things, man, I mean, they exist. And but like I said, our evidence we collect are the footprints.
Both you and my co-host Shane have had what I call confirmation encounters. You saw them, it wasn't a bear, you know what it was. I mean, you had enough time to process that what you saw was a Bigfoot. I unfortunately have not joined that group. I hope to at some point walk through the doorway, and I'm still skeptical. I'm skeptical of the evidence. I don't discount all the enormous amount of eyewitness in encounters that have been, including yours and Shane's, which really I'm at about 99% that Bigfoot exists, and that leaves me 1% that all encounters that have been reported are either misidentified or fabricated.
You jerk.
Oh. Shane could, Shane could be batshit crazy still. I'm on the fence.
Yeah, maybe too much Sasquatch coffee.
I know I'm batshit crazy. So I mean, we all are.
And honestly, Mike, being batshit crazy doesn't mean that you didn't see a Bigfoot. I mean, you could see a Bigfoot and still be batshit crazy. But I mean, it's funny, as a person that has not had that confirmation experience, I still you have to see it to believe it. And I think that any reasonable person is probably in the 99+% range. Your experience turned you from a person that didn't really even have a concept of Bigfoot to a believer in an instant. And it just your encounter is one of those that feed my curiosity to keep investigating this mysterious creature. So we're really closing in on on the end of the clock here, so I want to really thank Mike Cook for joining us today, and we want to have you back in the future to see what your experiences have been since between now and then. And I want to thank my co-host, Shane Corson, and I will say Hardcore Corson, for being here today, and all the listeners for joining us. And between now and we've got 10 seconds left in the show, so go to www.watchcoffee.com for buy some coffee. But and join us next week for another episode of Monster X Radio. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Mike and Shane, for being here today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Yesterday, Cliff Sora shared a top 10 list of hot fusion restaurants, a vegan gluten-free mashup recipe, and a podcast featuring organic food trends. Oh, TMI, too much internet information. That's oversharing. Cliff, Geico has something worth sharing with your friends. Like how on Geico.com you could save hundreds on your car insurance, update your policy, and report a claim. Gluten-free info that's easy to swallow. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Hey, it's Flo, and this is my impression of a drill instructor directing a musical. 10 hot! Get those tap heels in line and let me see those jazz hands! Are you bundling your home and auto insurance through Progressive? Can you hear me through those sequins?
Bundle your home and auto through Progressive and save.
Left, 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 and step ball change.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates. Home insurance provided and serviced by other select insurers.